Out of the 3 solar melees in the game right now, Bunk, Shoulder Charge, and Consecration actually gets by far the least amount of use. I believe it's because most people think they have to choose Consecration or any of the other 2. It's actually just an amazing addition that you could put on top of any of those 2 melees to make them even better. I'm going to show you guys today how I use it so you can add it to your arsenal as well. So, why am I considering the Consecration melee in the first place? Usually, I try out new builds to spice things up and make the game interesting for myself and other people. But in this case, what brought my attention to it was the new exotic Pyrogale Gauntlet. It improves the Consecration melee, giving it a Cyclone Flame effect. So, that got me thinking about it, so I decided to look into it a little bit. Now, for those of you guys who are thinking, why even bother trying anything other than the Bunk Hammer? Because it's pretty simple and safe to use. Throw hammer, it does damage and heals you every time, rinse repeat. Well, there's one thing it doesn't do as well as the other 2 options, and that's kill multiple enemies at the same time. When it comes to quick and efficient add clear with the Bunk Hammer, you end up killing 1 enemy at a time. But the other 2 melees cause ignite, which explodes everything around the enemy. Plus, the shoulder charge is also a very useful movement tool, although Bungie just nerfed that one to the ground in PvE, in my opinion, for no dang on reason. When it comes to getting your melee back, since the introduction of the Monte Carlo Catalyst, that's the direction that most people go. However, if you're using Bunk Hammer, getting your melee back is as simple as just walking over and picking it back up if you miss. If you don't miss, you pretty much just get it back instantly. But with this new idea of Consecration now, once you use your melee, that's it. You gotta wait for your melee to charge back up. Well, not exactly. On all Light Titan subclasses, you can keep an implied melee charge even after you've used your melee ability. Essentially, with solar, if you get a solar ability kill, since we're using Roaring Flames for this build, all your melee abilities do everything a charged melee does. It increases in damage with Roaring Flames, it can generate orbs on kill with Heavy Handed, scorches enemies that get hit, so instead of trying to recharge your melee, the way that I look at it for this build is just using the melee that I already have that does a lot until I get my charge melee back. There are 2 weapons that work well for this build. The first is for killing high level mobs. You might not know this, but it's possible to use 1-2 punch with shoulder charge. If you slide, shoot, and then melee, it activates the shoulder charge with the 1-2 punch buff. We'll be using the Big D with auto-loading holster and 1-2 punch, and for the energy weapon we'll use the crafted mini tool with Grave Rubber and Incandescent. Grave Rubber fills up your mag every time you get a melee kill. Since we're going to be doing that a lot with this build, that shouldn't be much of a problem. We also have Incandescent that spreads Scorch every time we get a kill with the weapon. So whether you're meleeing or you're shooting, you're going to be spreading a lot of Scorch and things are just going to be burning around you. So let's talk about how important Scorch is going to be for this build. We already touched on the aspects we use for this build. Roaring Flame stacks up to 3 times on solar ability kills and increases all your solar ability damage. The Consecration aspect activates the ground pound attack when you slide and have your melee fully charged. It scorches enemies during the first wave and ignites them when you hit the ground, so it's an amazing way to clear out a group of mobs. It's pretty much like having a wave frame grenade launcher that causes ignitions. Think about that for a second though. That would be insanely fun if Bungie ever brought that into the game. Well, we don't have to imagine much because that's what we have with this build. For the melee, I prefer the shoulder charge, but use what you prefer. If you want easy and safe, go with the Bunk. If you want fast and explosive, go with the shoulder charge. For fragments, we'll use things that's gonna give us healing and cause things to go. Boom! First one is Ember of Char. It spreads Scorch to the enemies that are affected by your ignition explosion. Ember of Searing gives melee energy and creates a fire spite when you defeat scorched targets. This works well with Ember of Mercy, which gives restoration when picking up a fire spite. If you're wondering what restoration is, it basically gives you continuous healing until the timer runs out. Lastly, we use Ember of Torches to get radiant when we use our charged melees on the enemies. So basically, since we talked about the mini tool which we're going to use to shoot, with Grave Rubber we're going to melee things, get more ammo in the mag, this spreads Scorch. Using this with all of that means our mini tool is going to be doing even more damage. For exotic, there are two options you can use for this build: Synthoceps and Paragale Gauntlets. Synthoceps cause it increases your melee damage when you're surrounded, and stacking that with Roaring Flames is a lot of damage. But Synthos seem to be the only exotic people use on Titan these days, so I'll say if you're new to playing on a Titan, enjoy Synthoceps, they're great. But if you're looking to try something new, let's use the Paragale Gauntlets. Keep in mind that since the Paragale creates, I'm not saying Paragale every time, so we're just gonna call it Pyro from here on out. So keep in mind that since the Pyro creates a Cyclone of Flame for your Consecration melee, it also increases the effective damage of that melee. You don't get the increased melee damage on every melee like you would with Synthoceps, but that Consecration melee, whenever you use it, is gonna be really strong at clearing out mobs. For stats, I'm sure you're thinking we'll run max strength because we've been talking about melees all day, but no. We've got something else up our sleeves for that. Instead of reducing the cooldown of our melee, we'll be getting chunks of melee energy instead. We'll run melee kickstarts, which instantly gives us half of our melee back when we use our charged melee. We'll also use heavy-handed to generate orbs on the melee kills we get, and when we pick up the orbs, double invigoration gives us chunks of our melee back. We also use momentum transfer, which lowers our grenade cooldown when we do damage with our grenade. Also, since our super is now useful for DPS, we run hands on to give increased super energy every time we get a melee kill, and we use Font of Wisdom, which reduces our super cooldown. Back to the stats now. We use the regular trifecta of Resilience, Recovery, and Discipline. You can prioritize them in that order as well, and enjoy the build. So we're back at that part of the video where we take our time and think of a comment to leave on the video. Doesn't even have to be words. You could just put an emoji there just so I know that you heard this part. You thought of one yet? Perfect. So leave a comment, positive, negative, constructive, whatever it may be. It helps out for other people to see the video. You could like it as well while you're at it. Cause come on, if you've been listening this long, you obviously are enjoying the video. So thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you're new, and I'll catch you on the next one.